Good morning and welcome. Welcome to the Retired Living Truth series, and today's topic, the truth about having difficult conversations, family dynamics. So Annette and I were talking this morning and yesterday with our team, and we just realised we're coming up on 9.5 years of doing these seminars. 9.5 years. Yeah.
Thank you.
And we never thought two real estate agents would be up here talking about dementia, healthcare, driving after 80, having difficult conversations, or that we would have like 100 plus people coming along every month to be with us. So we're just so grateful that you are all education-based, wanting to learn, and that you come along each month. So give yourselves a round of applause for being here. Yeah.
Thank you to all of you.
So while we're saying thank yous, our education partners are still outside, but we'd just like to acknowledge them, because without our education partners, we wouldn't be able to do the seminar series. We now have 25 education partners this year, and they're all returning next year, so they'll all still be here as a resource for you.
And we're getting a couple more that are joining us.
A couple of new education partners.
Which is great for you, because then you have more resources to pull upon as well as you need help.
And they're instrumental in helping us obviously set up the room every month, helping us with ideas, connecting us with speakers. So without them. So we just ask, if you know someone who could make use of our education partners, or if you can, please go and talk to them and see how they can help us all be better in our community. What else, Annette?
I think you hit on it, Brett.
We would like your help. So does anyone receive solicitations in the mail about buying your home for cash? Yes? Okay.
We're here laughing.
We have colleagues in other parts of the country telling us how it's becoming a challenge in other parts for different reasons. So we wanted to do some research and maybe do a seminar or a workshop next year talking about it. So how you could help us if you are receiving any type of solicitation, marketing flyers, letters, anything like that. Would you be willing to bring them along to us in January or a subsequent seminar, so we could maybe have a look at those and seeing what's being said, or if you're getting phone calls or emails, if you can save any of that so we can kind of see what people are receiving? Who'd be willing to help us with that if you do get something? Thank you.
That would be fantastic. Thank you.
If you could just bring that along, we'd really appreciate it.
And I just noticed that we have Gail and Mike in the audience, and I just want to thank them, because we have asked all of you, and actually they're not the only ones, but we've asked all of you if there's any clubs or groups that you belong to let us know about it, because we love the opportunity to be able to speak in front of them. And Gail and Mike suggested that we join their group, and it was the ski club. And we joined just this past week, and we had a fantastic time and looking forward to more events. So thank you for sharing your experiences with us. We really appreciate it.
And I'd just like to say thank you, obviously, to Mike and Gail, but what a great way to meet people joining a club. Yeah. They introduced us to so many new people. We now have more new friends, so it just made us realise, joining different clubs, different organisations is a great way to meet people, which is a plug for next month's seminar on travel, because we're going to talk about one of the truths about how travel can help you make new friends as well. Because I know people have come up and asked us about, where do we meet new people? And that will be another great place to meet people. So let's talk about today's topic. So today's topic, having difficult conversations. Annette and I were kind of talking about that, and we're talking about our son, Bryce. He just turned 18 this past year and started his journey as an adult by starting university. He's just finished his first semester, had his last exam yesterday. And I kind of think of it, here's us, here's Bryce when he was younger. And the conversations were kind of different. We were kind of directing him, helping him, as a young infant, and what he needed to know about life. And now that he's 18, he's kind of at the same level of us.
No, he's not.
No, he's not.
We are still guiding and directing him.
But the conversations are different. We can no longer tell him what to do. He's an adult. He's 18. Yeah. So the way we approach him, the conversations have to be a little bit more different.
That's true.
And some of the conversations when he was younger, were kind of difficult, the same with our other two children. And I know we have some not difficult conversations, but challenging conversations now. And I know as he continues to age and learns more and becomes more of an adult, Bryce might be up here and we're down here. We might be taking more advice and guidance from him as we're dealing with things as we age. So I'm sure there's more difficult conversations in our future.
I also recognize that my mom is in the audience as well, and I recognize that she asks us for advice on things, whereas when I was younger, I asked her more for advice. So it does change as time goes on. Have all of you noticed that with your own family members? Yeah, the dynamics changes. Yeah.
And some of us embrace that change and those conversations. Some of us not so much. Some of us don't want to have conversations with our children or our siblings. So we're going to kind of talk about it today, how, if it is a challenge, how maybe we can overcome it, and perhaps what some of the benefits are of being more open to conversations and how to have those conversations can make it better for us and for others. So with that said, I'd like my panelists to come up and join me, Dr. Rebecca and Dr. Lucas, and we're going to have a conversation with them about having difficult conversations. So welcome. Can we give them a round of applause for being here? I had the pleasure of spending an hour or so with them both last week talking about this topic, and they are so full of great information. They really know their stuff, and I think it's really going to help all of us when it comes to having these challenging conversations. So maybe I could start with you, Rebecca. Could you introduce yourself to the audience, a little bit about your background and what you do and how you might be of help to us today?
Sure. Good morning. I'm Dr. Rebecca Brown, and for the last 5 years, I have worked with hospice as a chaplain. I'm also a pastor in town, and so I preach and teach on Sundays. And I have had the privilege of walking alongside families during these really sensitive times of their life, end-of-life seasons, and I would say I've learned so much, not only about dying well, but also about living well. And I think part of living well is having these really difficult conversations and holding space for them. So I'm really honored to be here. Thanks for having me this morning.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Dr. Lucas.
My name is Dr. Lucas Broden. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I own a private practice here in town, but I currently work also in primary care for a large government agency. And in primary care, I have the opportunity to work with people. Frequently, it's on the backside of a big medical event, so a stroke or a cancer diagnosis or Alzheimer's diagnosis, and then having conversations moving forward with the patient, with their family, having conversations about life care. Less frequently, I get to have those conversations proactively, and they're so much easier when there's not that anxiety and pressure to make decisions and potential incapacitation of patients. And so I'm so excited to see so many people here willing to have difficult conversations proactively, and I'm really happy to be here with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you both so much for giving up your time to help us all grow and learn. And Lucas, I'll just have you hold. Yep, perfect. So maybe Lucas, I could start with you. So why is it so difficult, or why do conversations become more difficult as we all continue to age? And what are some of the common challenges that we face when trying to communicate with either our adult children or other family members?
Yeah, hopefully you've had some of these conversations already with your family, like you were alluding to earlier. We've had these conversations and history over time of having to make decisions with our family, and sometimes those go well and sometimes they don't go as well. But over time, these conversations take on more weight for two reasons. One, the conversations are around bigger topics. If I decide I want to move in with my daughter, that impacts my world, it impacts their world greatly, and if we're not exactly on the same page, then there's a groundwork for conflict there. Also, there's a time clock on these conversations, but it's an indefinite time clock, and people are really bad without solid timelines. So I have to have a really uncomfortable conversation, and I know at some point it's going to come up, but that could be 5 years from now, or it could be tomorrow. So I'll put it off a little bit longer, And so finding the time to have that difficult conversation is a challenge. A couple of things that I noticed for people that are barriers to having the conversations is lack of clarity on your part for moving forward. What do I want moving forward? If you go into those conversations without any clarity and without any guidance, it's a lot of room for argument. or being way too clear on what you want. I'm going to move in with you 3 months from now goes fairly poorly, usually. So being able to have a conversation that is grounded in what's important to you, so your values. What's important to me moving forward is spending more time with you as a family, as opposed to I'm going to move in with you in 3 months. There's a lot more wiggle room and a lot more flexibility in that conversation that way.
So I'm just curious, I just put up a slide that our panelists haven't seen, but important conversations we avoid. Can anyone relate to any of these reasons? Conflict, fear, embarrassment, cultural norms, gender norms. Can anyone relate to any of those that might cause them to avoid having a conversation? Yeah, usually sometimes fear of the response, or it's an embarrassing topic to talk about. Yeah. So Rebecca, what would you like to add that? Why is it more difficult to have these conversations, as we continue to age?
Yeah, I think there's a deep reluctance to be a burden, and I find that becoming more common of a reason why people choose not to engage in these conversations with their adult children. You don't want to be a financial burden. You don't want to have to deal with some of the emotional issues of your past where you didn't see eye to eye, where you had a disconnect, and so you would rather sort of put those conversations aside. Excuse me. I also would say that communication styles and just generational roles play a massive part in becoming a barrier to having these conversations. Your worldview, how you see the things that are happening in the world, those are real challenges to having a healthy, productive conversation. But as you age, your priorities shift to legacy, it shifts to relationships, it shifts to meaning, and so it's very important to start having these conversations as quickly as you can, even though your sense of urgency may be different than your adult children's sense of urgency. It's a necessary and, like Dr. Lucas said, it's a necessary and proactive step to take for healthy outcomes.
So what suggestions would you have for us if we are dealing with one of these reasons on the board, on the screen, like burden or guilt or fear? How do we overcome that to start engaging in conversation if that's an issue?
Yeah, I would say, as difficult as this is, but naming it, speaking those things out loud, I find a lot of times people just don't have the words to put together in a very simple sentence to begin, and having those kinds of tools in your tool belt would be helpful. Saying something like, hey, I know that you and I have not always seen eye to eye on A, B, or C, but I would really appreciate you holding space for us to try to walk through this next season together. You're naming a difficulty in your relationship. You're not dismissing it. And so naming it is half the battle. It's acknowledging there's a disconnect here, or we have fear here, or we haven't always been on the same page. So naming your difficulty. And then I would also say focusing on your shared values. We both want what's best for our family. We both want A, B, and C. And so naming the things that unite you versus divide you will help set a foundation for a healthy conversation. I would also say setting ground rules for a conversation, especially if there's tension in a relationship, setting some sort of guidelines, like let's set a timer, and for 2 minutes you're just going to listen to what I have to share, and without interruption. Setting some boundaries is super important when you're dealing with complicated conversations.
Wonderful. Dr. Lucas, what would you add?
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. I think that the values piece to that is very important. I think that entering a conversation with this is important to me and this is why this is important to me has a lot of value to it. It's hard to argue with what's important to you. It's easy to argue over details, but if you start the conversation more gently with this is why this is important for us to have this conversation, and also as an invitation to the other person, I would love to have you involved in the decision making on this moving forward. If you're willing to do that with me, because we don't want to force people into the conversation either. You want people to willingly be there and participating with you. And then, like Rebecca said, that addressing any emotion that's in the room, we tend to, when things get emotional, we want to shut it down or get away from it really quickly. And these conversations we're going to have to, oh, that's better, I should be closer to the mic. These conversations are going to have this emotion to it. So being willing to call out the emotion, say it seems like you're a little upset, can you tell me more about that? And then being willing to listen to what they have to say about it too, which is really challenging.
So what is, in your practice, what are some of the emotional barriers or obstacles that people have difficulty in terms of topics discussing?
Well, I think that it's everything that you've got on that slide right there.
Yeah. Okay.
is a nice summary. I would say most frequently it's fear, anxiety around big change. A lot of times people have been in their routine, in their habits for a really long time, have expectations of this is my space, this is the way things work, and it's very hard to move into another space where you don't know what's going to happen. And that's scary. And on the flip side of that, for the younger adult, it's very scary for them to have their aging parent potentially in a situation that's they could fall, or they could get lost, or they could have a medical event and not have support there. And those two, when we don't deal with the anxiety is the thing that drives the conversation. And so being able to recognize where we're nervous, and then together move forward with how we're going to solve that is really important.
So you mentioned a couple, like a fall, medical, health. What else, Rebecca? What other topics do people have difficulty discussing that you encounter?
I think safety is a big one, but I also think dignity. How adult children take care of their aging parents. You're crossing some lines that you're not used to crossing with regard to dignity. And so oftentimes you want to call in support to help take care of your aging parent in ways that you feel uncomfortable or they feel uncomfortable with. And so that's a big role that we do in hospice. And I just want to circle back, because you said something that's so important, is that it's an invitation. To overcome these emotional barriers, you have to frame it as an invitation. You're inviting your people to have a conversation with you about something that's very important to you, and that's your dignity and your safety. It's a way to honor your own story, but it's also a way to invite them in. And so framing these conversations as a, hey, I'm sitting at the table, I'm pulling up a seat for you, I would really appreciate it if you would join me for a conversation. I think offering a seat at the table to host a conversation like this is half the battle to starting to begin to overcome these emotional barriers.
Thank you. So I'm just curious from the audience, is anyone having struggles, having conversations with siblings or adult children, or you all just came here to see me and Annette today? No, so I see quite a few hands. Yeah, having challenge with conversations. Yeah, it's hard. So in your handout, Dr. Rebecca and Dr. Lucas helped us with some phrases, some conversation starters. So I think on page 2 or page 3. So you might want to look over some of these as we talk, and you might want to circle some like that. That one resonates with me. I could use that talking to my adult daughter or adult son or my brother, sister, and so forth. So yeah, just look those over as we continue on. So let's talk more about some strategies, conversations to start opening things up with those that we love, where we do need to have that difficult conversation. Dr. Lucas?
Yeah, I think that you have to go into this with the idea that it's going to be uncomfortable. You don't want to go into it with, we're going to have this great conversation, we're going to be on the same page about all the details, it's going to be wonderful. You want to go into it with, how am I going to navigate this in a way that we're going to get to the same page in the future, even though that might be uncomfortable in the present. Strategies that I would use is I would keep it general, and I would keep it small at first. I've been thinking about, as I age, here's some concerns I have, and here's some things that are really important to me. Would you be willing to talk to me about that? As opposed to, we need to make decisions about my end-of-life care or my transition out of my home or something that's going to be more emotionally laden. And then also, like we said earlier, an invitation to include others and say, it's really important to me to have you involved in this next step, and so I'd really like you to participate with me if you're willing to do that. And then after that, it's really about you could also ask the question about what's important for them as I age. What is important on your side of the table? What do you want from this relationship moving forward? And that's where you can find that common ground and the flexibility to find a solution that works for everybody.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I would add your posture and your tone is essential in hosting these conversations. Gentleness is important. Timing is very important. Sometimes it's really natural to begin this conversation after a family meal or you're out for a drive, but sometimes it's very helpful to schedule it and to say, hey, I want to start with my story. And so I'm going to frame out this need from my own perspective. I've been thinking about my life. I've been thinking about what matters to me. I've been thinking about the end of my life, and I would like to have a conversation with you about that. I'm wondering if we can schedule some time. I think a strategy often is to have an end time in mind. So if you have for example, you're going to go see the Nutcracker at 6 p.m. on Friday. Hey, would you mind coming over at maybe 4 and we can sit down for an hour and have dinner together, and I'd like to chat with you about this thing that's been on my heart. Then you have an end time, so if things get a little shaky and dicey, you have a get out of jail free card because we got to get to the Nutcracker and kind of spruce ourselves up for this event. I'm not speaking from experience, Brett. I'm just saying it's very helpful to have a way out. And so that's a strategy I often use when I'm beginning a very challenging conversation because, and I think the biggest thing to keep in your mind is usually these are not one and done conversations. You are beginning a long discussion and you're going to have that discussion over and over again. And sometimes you're going to have to call in help. Another strategy to begin these conversations might be saying something like, I read an article the other day, or I heard something on the radio the other day. And then it's not so personal. You're just talking about something out there that you heard and you observed, and then you're going to bring it in and anchor it into, and now it made me think that maybe we need to have this conversation. Are you open to having this conversation with me at some point?
So we could use this seminar as an excuse.
Exactly.
I went to a seminar this morning or yesterday or last
Yeah.
week, and they talked about difficult conversations.
And these yahoos were giving us some things to chew on. Yeah.
So you mentioned timing. So the holidays are coming up, Christmas dinner, is that the time to bring it up? Or
That's a negative, Ghostwriter. Yeah.
Or 5 minutes into the Nutcracker, or while we're waiting for the Nutcracker to start?
Yeah, we don't want to ruin any holiday events or create any chaos. I think it's really important to be mindful of, for example, if you have an adult child who is a lawyer and they're in the middle of a deposition, maybe not the best time. Maybe pause for a minute. I think sometimes our own urgency drives us to approach these conversations sort of aggressively and we come in hot. And instead, we have to be patient and really think through timing. And it's that invitation that we're talking about. I'm inviting you into a conversation, and I'm open to having this conversation during a time that works for you. So I don't know what's going on with your kids and what's going on with your marriage and what's going on with your work, and there could be a whole lot happening there that I want to honor and respect. And also, I have something very important to me that I need to talk about. So let's chat about the best time to have this conversation. And then I think bookending that with that get out of jail free event is helpful, whether that's a performance or a dinner, or you just have an appointment that you have to get to right now. You want to have something like that to be able to end the conversation should you need to.
I like that, having that end point. I've got to get to book club or whatever it might be. Yeah, great.
Ski club.
Ski club. Yeah,
you
exactly.
get
Yeah, ski club dinner party.
That's right.
Yeah. Lucas.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think that it's really important to make sure that you're prioritizing the long term with your family. And a lot of times the long term, the good for the long term, means that short term things have to be uncomfortable. And so making sure that you're willing to be there, be present, and be uncomfortable, but with an end time to it, so we don't get, because people tend to escalate if we don't have an escape hatch And so making sure that there's an end time so you can get out of the conversation, but you continue the conversation, because that's another thing that we naturally tend to avoid is discomfort with others, uncomfortable conversations. And then I had this uncomfortable conversation, now I have to do it again? Really? Yes, we have to keep having this conversation until it's comfortable and until there's a conclusion that is workable for everybody. And so making sure that we don't go to avoidance mode on discomfort is really important.
So our audience sitting out there, if you had to guess, what conversations are they avoiding? On what topics, subjects? Because our adult children are probably thinking about it, we're thinking about it, but we're in avoidance for all the things we've talked about. But what kind of conversations are our audience avoiding having, including Annette and I? What are some of the things that you encounter?
The most common one that comes to my office is transitioning from the house that you're in into an assisted living situation or a smaller home or something along those lines, or the opposite of I'm going to stay in this home as long as possible. I want my independence for as long as humanly possible, and the adult children are very nervous about that scenario. That's the most frequent. But finances always is another one. There's a lot of end of life.
So what would finances be? Mum and Dad, we're out of money. We're moving in with your kids.
We invested heavily in Bitcoin and it's going poorly now. There's lots and lots of financial, like I want to create a will or a trust, and this is the way that I want to separate the finances. People get very strange with money, in my experience, and will have reactions that you didn't anticipate at all with relation to money. And so having those conversations proactively instead of springing like, hey, I just did a trust and guess what, you're getting 20% when you thought you were getting the house or something like that. If we have those conversations about why you made decisions, why it was important to you, it goes much, much better than springing it. This is already a decision that's been made. You weren't involved, and now you deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah, don't do that. That's not a good way to do it. Yeah, I think finances is a big one for sure. But I think a lot of times there's an emotional component to these conversations that's at the forefront, and that's, I grew up in this house, and now you're telling me that you're selling it because you need to take care of yourself, Mom? This is my family home, and I wanted to have my kids have Christmas in this home. And so now you have this whole emotional element because you have memories tied to these pieces that rightfully don't belong to that child. And so now you have a very tense conversation. And so I find a lot of times with people that are towards the end of their life and they're making these decisions, when they make these decisions in isolation, without hosting a conversation, that is where the trauma begins and the dynamic breaks down. But if you can host a conversation with that invitation saying, I am nearing the end of my life. I need to have a very direct conversation with you. I don't want to talk about this. This is not fun for me either. But I really think that it would be a gift to me. It would be a gift to you if we had clarity. One of my favorite idioms is that to be unclear is to be unkind. And the more you can be clear with your language, the kinder you are, and the more people are receptive to hearing what you have to say. So when you're dealing with these very difficult choices of finances and what are we doing with the family home and how are we going to be paying for these things, or even if you had a financial plan and you were in assisted living and then assisted living went up, and now you're outside of your financial plan and you're having to have this uncomfortable conversation again because you can't stay in this place. What's the next step? Those conversations are all tied to memories and they're tied to emotions. And so holding space for those things will serve you well. And I think what you were saying earlier of not going in with this agenda. I already have made the decision. This is how it is. This is how we're going to walk. But coming in with maybe your agenda, you know what you want, you know where you want things to land, but you're willing to invite ideas and pathways, and perhaps there's a creative way where both parties feel comfortable with the outcome and nobody feels like their voice was not heard.
So I want to follow up on two things that you said. You said having these conversations near end of life. None of us are near end of life. I'm certainly not near end of life. Are we having the conversations too soon now? Annette and I talk about this with our children, different options when we pass, what we want to have happen. Should we be waiting till like, okay, I've only got limited time left, or is earlier better?
Yeah, earlier is always better. Urgency is a real pain in the neck because urgency gets in the way. So if you can have this conversation from a framework of, I am actually doing very well, I'm healthy, I don't have any concerns, I'm not having this conversation to scare you. However, wouldn't this be great if, what a gift to have all of these ducks in a row, so that when the time comes, we have already had this conversation and we already know where we're headed. It's a way different conversation when we're in the emergency room and we don't know what's happening and, oh my gosh, this came too quickly and I wasn't ready. Now everybody's a holy hot mess, right? So the earlier you can host these conversations, the better it will be for you and for your adult children.
Dr. Lucas, I can see you have something you definitely want to add.
Have you ever seen the infomercials on TV that says, you have 10 minutes to call to get this deal? They do that because you make bad decisions on a time clock, and they want your money. And so this is the exact situation, like with whatever the infomercial is. It's not the end of the world if you end up with a new dish towel or something, but you don't want these decisions to have this time clock on them, because you make worse decisions as a family and for yourself if all of a sudden we have to do this now because I'm in the hospital or because I got this big diagnosis and there's stress and decisions need to be made. It won't go nearly as well. And if you've had these conversations for a decade, and they evolve over time based on your needs, based on what you want, based on where your kids are in their lives, if you continue to have these conversations, the conversations are much, much smaller over time instead of a giant conversation with an infomercial time clock on it. So having them as early as possible is really useful.
Thank you. So Rebecca had mentioned having an agenda, so we can start a conversation on the topic of we're selling the family home and then get side-railed by the kids going off in some other direction. And one of you talked about having clarity in terms of what it is that we want to speak about. Mm-hmm. So what would you say to that, Lucas, in terms of us preparing ourselves to have clarity and to make sure that we don't end up getting resistance or the conversation going in some other direction and then we're just frustrated because we didn't get to talk about what was important to us?
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing is having this conversation with yourself. We avoid even thinking about these things a lot of the times. And so carving out time for yourself, all the advice that we just gave you about having the conversation with somebody else, do the exact same thing for you. Have some time, write down what is important to me. If I was to lay out the most perfect next 15 years of my life, what would that look like? As I age and as I need more support, do I want to be on my own, or do I want to be around other people? Do I want somebody in my house taking care of me? Can I afford that? Do I want to be in assisted living? If you're very clear on what you want in general, then you can go into the conversation with that foundation and that path. The way to think of it is it's the value, it's the importance, it's kind of like a sign telling you to go north. It gives you a direction, but it doesn't give you exactly how to get there. And then you're working with the other person on, I want to go north. What's the best route you think? How can we get there together? And that's the premise that you want to work from.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Rebecca, what would you add?
Yeah, I love that. Honestly, I think starting with I statements and doing that work yourself is helpful.
Starting with what statements?
The I statements. What do I need in this season? What matters to me most?
Why is that important versus?
I think it gives you a foundation to have the conversation, because if your child pushes back and says, well, what do you want? And you haven't worked through that yet, and you don't know what you want, that's also a sticky place for decisions to get made that you're not really okay with yet. And just because your person may have an idea, you yield because you want to not be a burden. And so you end up doing things that you're not really on board with and you're not really excited about. And so to be honest, you have to know. So you do have to do that introspective work first, and then I think being assertive doesn't mean being forceful, but it means being honest and speaking with clarity about what you want. I have found in hospice, I work as a chaplain, and a lot of times I'm called into homes because the patient does not know they are dying, and nobody can tell them. And so they call me in and say, we know, he doesn't know. We don't want him to know. There's an avoidance that happens because we kind of freak out with some of these very hard things. But what I have found in being honest and direct and saying to a patient, hey, I want you to know that your body is failing and you are dying. That is the reality of the situation, and that is why I am here. Oh, what a gift. What a kind, beautiful moment that is for somebody to have real, honest information communicated with a posture that's kind, and then it invites space for questions. And what's next? What does this mean? Is this going to be scary? Is there pain involved? But when you have families that are avoiding so spectacularly, I have found, and I know that this is what Dr. Lucas feels too, honesty and clarity communicated in a way that's slow and patient and kind is the best possible pathway.
Yeah, well, that's what we all want, isn't it?
Yeah.
The truth, so we can make good decisions.
Yes, exactly.
That's why it's called the Truth Series. So
Yeah.
the truth, because then we're in a better position to. Versus,
Great name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Dr. Lucas, did you have anything you wanted to add before we go to the next question?
No, I agree with all of that. In every aspect of your life, you want to be able to have all of the things that are in front of you so you can make a reasonable decision with the actual facts. And if you don't have the facts, then you can't make good decisions and you're blindsided by things. Mm-hmm. So I couldn't agree more with being straightforward, being clear, but doing that with kindness is absolutely the way to go.
I'm just curious from the audience, if you were on your deathbed, hospice has come in, would you like your family to just sugarcoat it and not tell you what's going on? Or would you want to know the truth that I've probably got 4 months left? And who would want to know that that they're dying and they've only got so much time left? I know I sure as heck would. Yeah, I think we all would. Maybe there's a few of us in denial, but yeah. Because then I make good decisions. These are the people I need to talk to. This is what I need to get done. This is,
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So we talked a little bit last week about active listening. Mm-hmm. So why is active listening so important, not only for the person that we're talking to, our adult child or sibling, whoever it might be, but in reverse, for us to become better active listeners? Who would like to start with that? Dr. Lucas?
Sure. I think that active listening is the key to this entire
Can you define what that
conversation.
means first?
Sure. Active listening basically means that you are listening to all the words that are being said and you're reflecting those back so they know that you're actually hearing what they're saying. And that's really useful to make sure that you're on the same page. I can't tell you how many times that somebody said, I was so clear about the things that I wanted. And I asked the other person, I was like, what did they say to you? And they were like, oh yeah, they said they wanted to move to Denver. I was like, what? We didn't talk about this at all. Where did that come from? And so being able to hear what the other person is saying, being able to reflect that back and say, I'm hearing you say this. Is that what you mean? And have them clarify the details on that. And just like we were talking about having all the facts laid out in front of you, this is how you get the actual facts of a conversation and agree upon those facts, is through active listening and reflecting those things back to each other. I'm hearing you say that you're really worried about me staying in my own home because you're worried I might fall and be hurt. Yes, that's what I was talking about. I'm very nervous about that. Perfect. We understand each other. Because another thing that we tend to do is we tend to nod our heads and agree with people when we're uncomfortable. And we say, oh good, we're on the same page, I can move on. But if you're not actually on the same page, then this will come up again and again and again, and it will come up more aggressively or more emotionally and in a way that's not as productive. So making sure that we get on the same page as quickly as possible so you don't have to have the uncomfortable conversation 14 times is really useful. Let's stick with that.
Who thinks they're a good active listener?
It's an honest room.
Yeah. Thank you for all being truthful.
Yeah.
I thought I was a good active listener because I try to practice it. Annette's going to totally disagree because she asked me the other morning, or she tells me she asked, and I'm sure she did, do you have Bryce's prescription to go and get contact lenses? And I apparently said, yes, I do. And then later in the day I asked her, where is the prescription for Bryce's contact lenses? So I was not actively listening. I answered and didn't even realize I was answering. It's like, yeah. And I know that happens quite often, doesn't it, Annette? So I need to work on it. So what would you like to add, Rebecca, as far as helping us be better active listeners?
Yeah, I think we model that posture. I think active listening is healing. It's one of the best possible postures we can hold in these conversations. So modeling that looks like your nonverbal cues of, yes, I hear what you're saying, eye contact, head nods, super important. But then, offering an opportunity to communicate what you've heard. So if somebody is talking to you, you can say, do you mind if I tell you what I just heard from you? This is what I think I understand you're communicating. And then you guys can get clarity there. When you model that, it also opens the doorway for you then to say, do you mind telling me what you just heard? Because I really need to make sure we've got this buttoned up. And then you're not just a punk, right? Because you've modeled it. So we want to make sure we're doing that as often as we can. And then expressing gratitude is a massive piece of active listening, of being able to say, thank you so much for hearing what I'm saying. Thank you so much for listening and taking the time to understand what I'm trying to communicate. It's really important to me, especially if there's tension in the relationship. That act of gratitude, that expression of gratitude is a healing posture.
So that having them repeat it back allows us to clarify anything that was miscommunicated. Maybe I didn't communicate it very well to Annette, and when she repeats it back, I realize she either hasn't heard it the way I meant it to be heard, or I just haven't said it very well, which is more likely.
And you can take another stab at it and try to tackle it from another angle and make sure you get clarity.
So what happens when I realize the other person isn't actively listening? I can tell that they're tense or crossed their arms or have kind of tuned out because they don't want to hear this conversation. Do I just keep plowing ahead and beating it into them, or?
That's fun.
That's fun.
Yeah. We all enjoy those conversations. No, I do think even putting a pin in it and saying, hey, this is not going anywhere. This is not going well. Let's take a beat. Let's circle back at another time and scheduling another time. You don't want to give up on this conversation. It's a dog after a bone. You want to make sure you have this conversation, but oftentimes you need to call in a third party. You need to call in a mediator. That could be another family member if that's appropriate. Could be a family friend that's trusted. It could be a church leader or a community liaison, and sometimes it escalates to where you really need a counselor present, somebody who can sit with you and mediate these conversations. And I know that at some point we'll kind of chat through resources there, but calling in a third party sometimes is the only way. You might be sitting here this morning already knowing that is the only way. I know this relationship with my daughter, and we're not going to have this conversation well, and we're going to need that help. And that's a beautiful thing, to call in a mediator to help foster these conversations.
Well, let's talk about that now. Who can help us? So you mentioned having...
Yeah, this guy can.
Yeah,
he's awesome.
Well, let's go through the layers of who can help us. As you just said, people have already realized. I've tried talking to my daughter and I just get nowhere. We've tried 5 times. It just ends up being, an angry fight, and it's not a good feeling for any of us.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a friend would be an option.
Yeah, a friend is an option, absolutely. My role with hospice is actually sort of free to the community with regard to grief counseling and supports that are out there. And so there are free resources through hospice companies, through different facilities in town. You have a lot of different directors of community relations and social services that are able to host these conversations with you. And so there are lots of those resources that I even saw represented out there. Those are probably your free resources. Calling and saying, hey, do you have a chaplain or a social worker that would be able to host and facilitate a conversation with my family? That resource can escalate it to a paid pathway, which is this guy's for so I'll let him speak about that. But oftentimes these conversations can be 1 to 4 sessions with a mediator, and then you have the boundaries and you have the ducks in a row, and you say, okay, I think we can take it from here. Thank you so much for your assistance. If it gets to the 3rd session on my end, usually that's when I'll escalate it, and we'll tackle that pathway.
Before we tackle that pathway, I think that having the physical presence of somebody else in the room tends to keep people's behavior in check a lot better than if it's just one-on-one with other folks. And the only caution that I have, if you were to bring a friend or somebody that is known to both parties, is sometimes you have a perception concern. So if it's a friend of the child, the older adult, the parent may say, you're just taking their side on everything, and vice versa. If it's a parent's friend, they're like, well, you just want them to get what they were looking for anyway, and you can have a bigger issue. That's the only caution that I have with that. If you're bringing in a hospice worker, a social worker, any of those, they're not going to have that background with you. And especially if you've already got a meaningful relationship with somebody at the church, somebody that can step in, I think that that's a beautiful way to go, because they already kind of know you and your situation and your family and can step in very quickly. If you're having issues where I feel like this is going to do damage to our relationship moving forward, that's when you might want to, and it's not working with mediation, or if there's mental health concerns in general, then it might be useful to bring in a counselor to help with those sessions. And again, that may be brief. It may be 3 or 4 sessions, or maybe a longer term thing, or maybe something where you can come and revisit over time. Like we've suggested, these conversations evolve over time. It's like a living conversation that continues over time. And so if you've got somebody that already knows the situation, can pop back in with you, I think that that's really useful.
So, for example, if it was regarding Annette and I and our trust and division of assets between the kids and so forth, we could go back to our attorney, Rich Schultz Law Group, and have him be there as kind of like the mediator as we're trying to explain it and what it means, the documents and so forth. Would that be valid if it was like legal?
Yeah.
And then maybe our financial planner, if it's telling our kids that we've got no money, we bought Bitcoin and the money's gone. And so
Absolutely.
Just involving our professionals, our CPA. So just going back on your work, Rebecca, so I don't know if everyone realises Gentiva Hospice are one of our education partners that are here every month. Is AJ or who's here from Gentiva?
Dawn was here.
Dawn is here?
I think she just stepped out.
Oh, she just stepped out.
Yep.
There's a good reason to go and talk to Gentiva Hospice if you're having trouble with these conversations and getting ideas and connecting with Rebecca, being able to help move forward.
Pick me.
Yeah. But true of any hospice company, there's lots of organisations in our community that are free or very low cost. And then, if you're really struggling and that doesn't work, then Lucas and people in his field, or you'll get referred to Lucas when it gets too hard.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's what our education partners are here for. So let's talk about, did you have anything else you wanted to add? So let's talk about like boundaries for these conversations. So how do we set that up? You mentioned about scheduling a time, not just doing it in the moment.
Yeah.
Having an end point. Are there any other things that would help us have this conversation if we haven't attempted before, in terms of any rules of engagement, so to speak, in terms of who speaks and who doesn't, who needs to be quiet? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just went through this a few years ago with my dad. My dad was on hospice. I'm the youngest of 6 kids, and all of my siblings and I, we disagree on everything. We disagree on religion and politics and all the hot button issues because there's 6 of us. And so my dad had to host these conversations with 6 feisty, passionate, opinionated children. And he would set very clear boundaries, but one of the biggest ones was he started every conversation by saying, I have a lot of patience. I'm asking you to have a lot of patience. And patience was our sort of groundwork, that we don't have to resolve everything today. And one of the things that my dad afforded me that I'm so grateful is that he asked me to be upfront about what I could and could not do. And it was very helpful because my dad asked me to be the executor of his will. I'm the youngest of 6 kids, but I'm the one that can have the hard conversations. And so because I could engage in these emotional pieces, my dad thought I would be a great fit for the executor of his will. And I said, that's a hard pass, Dad. It's not my competency. I do not want to do that. I'm overwhelmed at that. I'm a single parent with 2 young kids. It's too much for me. So because I was honest and upfront with my dad about my capacity, my brother could then step in and say, okay, Rebecca can handle the emotions and feelings, and I will handle the will, because I can step in here. And so what we found is it took us a minute, it took us time, which is why patience is crucial. It took us time to understand what we could do and what we couldn't do with my dad's end of life. And so we had to foster conversations, and we set a schedule, and every Monday at 6 p.m. we would get on a Zoom call with all the siblings, and we would have a topic on the table. What we're doing, is there a funeral? Dad, do you want a funeral? What do you want to do with your body? Do you want to body donate? Do you want to be cremated? Would you like to be buried? Where? Who's paying for that? We would talk about that. And then we would move on to the next thing. What are we doing with all your stuff when you go? How would you like us to divide your assets? What's the plan here? And it was slow and steady, and my dad was on hospice, and so we were afforded that time, which not everybody has, but it was a slow and steady conversation, and our boundaries were, if it escalated, my dad had the right to say, we're putting a pin in it. You guys are too emotional. And he would send emails. And he would send an email saying, this is what we talked about in our meeting. And this is what we did not get resolved. And this is what we're picking back up next Monday. And he was very organized about the whole thing. And it was very challenging emotionally, but my dad had a beautiful passing, and all of his wishes were honored. And my siblings and I had Thanksgiving together this year and still love each other. So we're calling it a win.
That is a win. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
If we can only all be so fortunate as your family.
Yeah.
But could we use that as like dad's emails to communicate with our children? It's like, my 3 kids, from Annette and I, we want to talk to you about this topic, and here's the agenda of the things that we would like to cover, and the things, if you have questions about, free to ask, but we'd like to set up a time in the next month to cover these things because they're important to us.
Yeah, and the boundaries within the conversation were, if you're not ready to have this conversation, that's fine. Communicate that and be honest, and then communicate how much time you need. So, Dad, I'm going to need 2 weeks to look into what an executor of a will is, and then I'll circle back and let you know if that's something I think I can take on. And so I gave myself 2 weeks with my life to figure that out. So we had boundaries like that set up for timeline, which helped us be honest. I can't answer that question right now. I will say it takes an enormous amount of emotional intelligence to be able to foster these conversations in a healthy way, because I wanted to do anything that my dad asked. I love my dad very much and was devastated that he was passing. I was highly, highly emotional and irrational during that season. I was in deep grief, and so I kept having to tell my mind, calm down. Don't say yes to Dad just because you want to say yes to everything, because I knew I would fail him at doing what he asked me to do if I didn't have the competency to do it, or the capacity. And so it was weighing those things and crying and highly emotional time, but being able to communicate and saying, I'm too emotional, I'm too sad right now to have this conversation. Can I circle back in 2 weeks with an answer? And then I could take my tears and work through my grief and my emotion and then circle back. So we had boundaries like that in place to help each person deal with their emotions as they needed.
Thank you for being so willing to share with
happy to.
Emotional and challenging. Yeah. So in our office, our real estate office, our team meet every Monday, and we talk about our clients who we're working with, who needs help with what. And Annette, is part of the meeting, and she'll be talking about clients that sometimes challenging. And usually the challenge is because we help, older adults who are downsizing and so forth. The challenges are around, and her frustration is that our clients aren't talking to the children, or the children are calling us complaining that, mum and dad won't tell us anything, we don't know what's going on, and we're just trying to help mum and dad because we love them. And isn't that right, Annette? A lot of frustration of... And then it goes, if they'd all just talk together, this would be so much easier for them and for us, for everybody. So that kind of comes back to boundaries. Some people have set the boundaries. I'm not going to communicate with my adult children at all, rightly or wrongly, but what would you say about that, Lucas, as a boundary? Does that help or hinder them in terms of the parents and the children? Is that a good boundary to have? We just don't communicate?
Not communicating is not a great boundary to have. And so setting up the guidelines around the conversation in a way that is safe, that it's not going to escalate. Again, your goal always is how are we going to be closer at the end of all of this rather than farther apart. And so having boundaries on like this is going poorly, like people are getting too upset, it's okay for us to step away. It's not an insult to anybody for us to step away. It's just us taking a break, letting our heads get more clear on what we want from this and coming back and revisiting. When, I don't know if this came up in your situation. Thank you so much for sharing that story also. It's just it's a beautiful encapsulation of everything we've talked about how it was difficult and it didn't go perfectly and I feel like I'm letting people down. I feel like I can't do this. It's emotional. And we got to the end where we had a really beautiful passing and it was meaningful and we're closer as a family. I mean, that's what we're aiming for here. But in my experience, they're small decisions that you're making, but small decisions at the end of life tend to take on a lot more meaning than you were intending. And so asking you to be the executor, for example, could make 5 other siblings feel like, oh, he didn't trust me to be the executor? Like, of course, I always knew he thought I couldn't handle that. And it's like, that wasn't my intention at all. This person was with me just now, maybe. And I said, this needs to be done. So I gave him a task. But all of those little decisions, if you're not having these big conversations, leave a lot of room for interpretation. And at the end of life, it's interpretation of them, your reflection of them as a person for their whole life. Mm-hmm. And so you have to really talk these things out. I'm making the decision. I'm asking you to be the executor because of this. And then honesty on the flip side. I can't do that because I'm bad at that. Maybe let's give that to somebody else. Mm-hmm. But again, lots of open conversations and looking for, are people upset about this and why are they upset? And let's get to the bottom of that, because my intention was never to upset you. My intention was to move forward with decisions, but I can see that I did something that made you upset. So let's talk about it.
If you had one final piece of advice to give to our audience before we go to their questions, what would it be that might help?
I mean, you guys have done step 1. You're all here and willing to be considering having these conversations proactively. My word of warning is that I have these conversations all day with people that never talked about this and have had a serious medical event already, and now it's so hard. Having these conversations, even though they're difficult, is caring and love for your family. That's what this is. Even though it's hard, you're willing to have this conversation and move forward with them together. And so my advice is walk out the door today, try to set up a time to have this conversation and be willing to have it not go perfectly, and then continue to try.
Thank you. Just before I hear yours, Rebecca, can I have my education partners all stand up? All my education partners, please stand up so everyone can see you. And now, put your hand up if you have difficult conversations with the clientele you help every day. Yeah, you're all skilled communicators. You're all used to having difficult conversations. So another reason for anyone in the room who's having challenges, go talk to any of our education partners, because I know they could help you how to go about approaching a conversation. You could probably even role play it. They'd be happy to role play with you in terms of how to have that conversation with that adult daughter or son or whatever it might be. Am I correct? You'd all be willing to help if people are having challenges? Yeah. And that's why we have our education partners here. So thank you. So Rebecca, your final piece of advice you'd like to impart to help people.
Yeah, I would say that to be unclear is to be unkind. And so to find clarity about what it is that you need and communicating that as directly and gently as you can is wise. My kids are 10 and 12, and my kids know my wishes already. I do work in death and dying. However, and so they're real up on it. They know what's up, and we've gone through quite a few of our family members passing. But my kids know what will happen when mom dies. They know what mom wants. and they know what's going to happen to them if mom dies, and there's clarity, and that conversation is something we have consistently. I talk to my kids at least once every quarter, just a reminder, and now it's casual, like we're at a stoplight or we're having breakfast. But laying that groundwork now, even if you're not in that season of your life, is so helpful for fostering healthier conversations down the line.
What a great gift. Yeah. Thank you. So if you have a question, raise your hand of our panelists, and then we'll get through as many questions as we can. Sorry, Annette? I'll change the slide. Thank you.
I've begun having conversations with my children, adult children, about this. My biggest problem so far has been that my two daughters, who are kind of the primary people in decision making once I'm gone, they're very different personalities, like you were mentioning, and I feel comfortable giving her far more responsibility than the other. However, the other now is, what do you mean? What do you mean? I can do that too. And that's been really difficult for me. I don't want to cause a conflict between them that I caused, nor do I want conflict between them and me. How do you resolve that when your children might not have the gift of what you want to give them, or to handle what you give them?
My sister and I are the daughters you're describing. My sister and I are complete opposites, and my dad was actually much closer to my sister, but she could not at all deal with the fact that my dad was going to pass. So my dad had individual conversations, one with me, and then one with my sister, and then he hosted a conversation with the three of us. I have found in my work with hospice that has been an outstanding dynamic to have, one-on-one, and then what was said one-on-one is then communicated and reiterated in the group. And so my dad was very clear with me about his wishes, and I understood them, and I had buy-in. He had to get my buy-in and my okay. And then he had the same conversation with my sister, and then she had to endure the conversation with the three of us, which was very difficult for her. Because of her emotional capacity with what was happening. So I think being gentle and kind and honest in those conversations is important, but you are empowered to get what you need and to communicate that in the manner that you see fit. These are your rights. You get to step forward and have the quality and dignity and honor that you want. And so it is really fostering a conversation to get both gals on board, and that might require a third party to come in and help. But I would start there, one-on-one conversation, and then, hey, I just want to make sure nothing was said and you think that I wasn't honest, or I'm trying to avoid any kind of conflict between the two of you. This is what was said in those one-on-one meetings. This is what I want. This is what I'm hoping you'll join me in helping me move forward with. I've seen a lot of success with that, and sometimes you need to call someone else in. Yeah.
I like the point you made too, though. It was Dad's decision.
Yes.
It was involving both of you, but at the end of the day, Dad had to make the decision as to who and what.
Yes.
And take that responsibility. I have to own it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Correct.
Not be what you girls want, taking what you
Yeah.
your input, but ultimately he had to make the decision.
Yeah.
Who's going to be the executor, or who's going to look after whatever it might be.
And he was also very clear about stuff. My dad would say something like, I don't care about this thing. Seems like you two care about this thing. I don't care about this thing. So I'm not going to care about it. I'm not involved in conversations. If you two want to fight and blow up your relationship over a guitar, go for it. But I don't care about this guitar, right? So my dad was very clear in setting his boundaries and setting boundaries about what he was willing to endure our nonsense about.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Did you have anything you wanted to add, Lucas?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think that having the conversation one-on-one with both daughters and focusing in on, this emotion seems like it's coming up, and I'm just trying to wrap my head around, where's it coming from? Like, are you interpreting this as like a judgment from me on you, or can we talk more about that? Because here's where I'm coming from, and then getting on the same page. And then the final part of that is getting everybody on the same page and saying, this is what was said when I talked to you, this is what I was said. I love that, because there's also that well, you said this to her and you're just saying that to be nice and make me shut up, basically. It's like, no, I wasn't. I really just want to get on the same page with everybody, understand where you're coming from, and I don't want to hurt you. And so, but I need to move forward too, so let's talk about that.
Thank you. Sandy, we have a question over here.
Yes, Dr. Bratton. Excuse me, Dr. Lucas. You mentioned there was an aging timeline with milestones. Is there a template, and can you expand on this?
Yeah, as far as timeline for when we should be making the decisions, starting as early as possible, starting with 10-year-olds will be great. But you want to have the foundation of the conversation. You want to start the conversation as quickly as possible and get the foundation of the conversation done as quickly as possible so you're on the same page with the big picture things and then working out details, because you don't know when you're going to need to execute this conversation. You have no idea. And so the faster you get the big picture down, where people understand the direction that you want to move, the family understands where they're moving in a direction, they can make decisions within that if you haven't ironed out all the little details yet. So you don't have to have this finalized, but you have to have, this is what's important and this is where we want to be. So I don't have the exact timeline, but it's basically as soon as possible have the conversations and get the broad picture agreed upon.
Thank you. So that's a great segue. If everyone will turn to page 3 of their handout. Page 3 of the handout, everybody. Last page. What does it say down the very bottom? Someone remind me. It's kind of rhetorical because I know what it says, but I want someone to tell me. Well, yell it out. Yeah, what's your one action? Yeah. So from today, what is one action you need to take? It might be nothing, that's fine. But is there someone you need to speak to? Is there a conversation you need to have? We always like you to walk away and then do something with this great information that's being shared with us. So my one action is to have another conversation with our three kids about end-of-life wishes. That's what Annette and I are going to go and do. That's our one action. Just so we keep having that conversation, which we do, but I love bringing that up quarterly. Yeah. It's like, kids, I'm going to die at some point. We might as well make sure we're clear. Yeah, so what's your one action? So Nikki, do you have a question over on this side as people ponder their one action?
I just wondered if you had any comments about the spouses of our children and their influence. You know, my two kids are very, very close, and I know they talk about me, but the spouses are very different, and, you know, just if you have any comments about that.
Great question.
Yeah, absolutely. There's always different dynamics, and just because you are married to somebody doesn't mean that you both have the same plan moving forward, and a lot of times those conversations haven't happened either. So having a conversation with your spouse on where you're at and what direction you guys want to go and what's important to you moving forward is really, really valuable. And because you can't have a conversation with the kids if you guys don't know where you're at. Oh, spouses of the children. Yeah. Oh, yes.
Now, do we involve them? Do we have the conversation just with our child or our child and spouse?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you have to have a conversation with everybody eventually, but it's that same sort of principle of like getting on the same page with this is what's really important to me. Let's have a conversation with my child about that, potentially one-on-one, if I think that there's going to be a potential issue there. And then talk about like, same sort of thing though, like you have, in my experience, you have to address the elephant in the room. You can't just say like, I'm going to push forward, I'm going to get my son or daughter on the same page as me, and we're going to steamroll this other person. That is going to go poorly for them, and your goal is harmony within the family in the long run, not in the short run. So being willing to say, this is what my wish is, this is where my son or daughter is coming from, tell me how you want to be involved and how this impacts you. And let's hear it out. Let's see if we can get on the same page with that. Because yeah, they have a completely different history and perspective and desires in their world that may not align with yours or your child's. And it's challenging though. It's very challenging. But if you aren't all on the same page, it's going to cause problems in their relationship. As soon as you leave the room, they're going to be fighting about it. So having the conversation, being willing to be uncomfortable and see if you can get moving in a direction together is the way to go.
That sounds a perfect time for a mediator.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I'd love
Yeah.
to be a fly on the wall listening to this conversation with the children and the siblings, the spouses, I should say.
Yeah,
Rebecca.
this is going to sound a little manipulative, so I'm going to try to frame it appropriately. But I think when you're dealing with really complicated dynamics, I think it's helpful to reframe things as a gift. And so you are offering them, these spouses, an opportunity to not be present for this conversation because it's really a gift to them. It's protecting them from all the tasks and what's ahead, and then that affords you an opportunity to talk with just your daughters or your sons and have a conversation. That's exactly what my dad did. It was very helpful, and then we could go and talk to our spouses about what was discussed, but they largely were excluded from those conversations, and it was framed as a gift, and at the end of the day, it was a major gift, because when you have 6 kids and then you have 6 spouses, it's just too much hubbub, you know? So there is space for you to say, I would love to just have lunch with my kids and have a conversation about this. I am content if you go and share this with your spouse or your partner, but I would appreciate the decision making. This is a boundary you're setting. Stay within this nucleus, and there's reasons for that. You can disclose them or not, but I think setting those boundaries is up to you. You are empowered to do that, to make sure that your dignity and your safety and your needs are met with the least amount of emotional fallout.
I love that. And is there a time where it makes sense to involve the spouses?
Sure,
Is it like
yeah.
situational based on family dynamics and how everyone
Yeah,
gets
and
it?
I think, again, it's that clarity of boundary. If you're communicating with your daughter and you're saying, I would appreciate hosting this conversation with just us, I have no problem with you telling your partner. My request is if there is a disconnect, you talk with me alone first, and then we can bring partner in. That will make me feel more emotionally safe and more comfortable. I have not seen that dishonored very often. If there's clarity and boundary and everybody is in agreement, you're usually on the right path. You'll call in a mediator when that boundary is violated and you can't get back on that path. But I think if you're very clear up front with what makes you feel emotionally safe and comfortable having a very challenging conversation on your end, I think most of the times the kiddos want to honor that as best as they can. Spouses may have an issue, but that's going to be their conversation, and you can exclude yourself from that.
Did we point out how to get hold of Rebecca and Lucas if you need help? Did we cover that? No?
Nope, not yet.
If you turn to the first page of your handout, you'll see their names and their phone numbers. So if you need help, feel free to reach out to one or both of them, or again, any of our education partners. Which side of the room? Whose turn? Sandy's side. Thank you, Sandy.
I think we were pretty lucky. We wanted to do a trust, and we wanted to talk to our son about it, and we were going on about what we wanted, and he stopped us and said, let me tell you, I think you ought to just live your life, and if you live it the way you should, the day you pass, you would have spent your last nickel.
Thank you, Sue. I like that plan. Do we have any other last questions? I was expecting way more questions about family dynamics and challenges. I think Rebecca and Lucas, you have armed us all with the tools and skills that we need to go out and have some conversations. One more over here. You have a question, Joe?
Yes, it's a little on the, am I on? It's a little on the humorous side, but Dr. Brown, if we ever go through life again, I'd like you to be my mother.
I appreciate that. Thank
I
you.
love that.
A few of us could probably relate. Yeah. It's all about having open conversations.
That's right.
So why are we so reluctant to have these conversations? I know they're difficult, but why? Doesn't it make it so much better once we've had them? Don't we feel so much more relief knowing what's going on and what mum and dad want, or knowing our kids' input or their thoughts? Or
Yeah, I think it's culture. You know,
Culture?
you're raised in a culture that teaches you to stop, drop, and roll if there's a fire. But we definitely don't talk about death. We definitely don't talk about grieving, you know. And so as a culture, we don't know how to assist grievers very well. And it makes us uncomfortable because we weren't raised hearing about, oh, there's a fire? Do you guys know that there's a fire alarm right here? And you stop, drop, and roll. And, you know, we had this education from a very young age. But as a culture, you know, I didn't learn about death until it was before me, and I didn't have the tools to deal with it. So I think it's a cultural norm that we don't know how to talk about this because we just don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's three things we're going to talk about: money, you know,
Yeah.
finances, sex,
Totally.
and death.
Off
That all's
the
kind of like
topic.
taboo for some reason.
Yep.
Yeah, but we'd all be better off if we did.
That's right.
Yeah, awesome.
In addition to culture, it's discomfort. We're not good at pushing into discomfort. I mean, I know that I should go to the gym every day because that in the long term will make me really healthy. Do I go to the gym every day? No, not so much. And so having these conversations when I need to go in and have them when nothing is going on is really hard. It's really hard to say, I don't have any skills. The culture says that this is something that we probably should avoid talking about. And now I'm going to go in with people I really care about and maybe blow everything up. Okay, let's go sign me up for next Tuesday. You know, that's hard to get going on. So being willing to push into this and being willing to try it out without all the skills necessary and kind of learn as you go is necessary and a challenge.
I'm just curious, did anyone write down an action? Good, a few. Is anyone willing to share their action? Totally optional. If you're not, that's totally fine. Yeah? Could we get mic runners to the two people who are willing to share their action? Because that might just help someone else. It's like, I really do need to do that. So I appreciate you being willing to share. As long as it's not having a difficult conversation about Brett or about me. Yeah.
You know,
Joe.
Well, yes, I found Richard's office to be a great help for Lois and me. And
Say that first part again, Joe. I missed that.
pardon me?
I missed the first part of what you said.
Right, there we go. This is something that we've spent a lot of time with Rich on and Melissa. It's been very helpful to try to do these things by yourself. It's just killing, I think.
So you're referring to Rich Schultz on the legal part, having those discussions
right.
on...
You know, and I don't hesitate to pick up the phone or send an email. I think it's very important. The kinds of things that come up are just absolutely amazing, and we can get hung up and lose a lot of money if we don't have good help. And Rich isn't even going to take me out to lunch for saying this, but that's very, very important. But all these things that these two kind people have come here to talk about have been absolutely wonderful. And I've heard them before, and I try to practice it myself because things happen, like your 67-year-old son gets really mad at you because you weren't home when he called on your birthday. So,
well, thank you, Joe, for sharing. And Rich, expect a call from Joe for some more assistance on these challenging conversations. Down the front, we had one more. Thank you, Annette. Or did I miss someone else? What's your one action that you're going to take as a result of today?
After the first of the year, I'm going to set up Zoom meetings. I think that's fabulous because my one daughter's in Boston, one's in Vegas, and never they meet. So I'm going to set up the Zoom meeting. And I'm also going to give them, I will request that they write down topics that they know concern them and send them to me. So we could say, okay, I heard this, this, and this. For this conversation, we're going to talk about this topic. I thought that was fabulous what your family did.
Awesome.
I love that. Thank you. Yeah, we could tell our children what's concerning them, what's keeping them up at night about us. I love that. Over on this side, Annette. No, over here.
You can talk about these topics, but you better write them down because what I talk about on Monday, I will forget by Wednesday. So I think you need to have an outline or something
Yeah.
for people, because as we get older, we forget, even into the point of dementia, eventually, maybe.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with the dementia situation?
With these conversations, yeah, it's a challenge. Some of these gals might actually...
Nikki and Sandy with the
Yeah.
Alzheimer's Association
Yeah,
are your resource to help.
They would have some tips and tricks.
And speaking of conversations that we need to have, that handout, so as you go out, you'll see on our table this time, there's a handout, and it has some of the topics that we probably should be having conversations with our adult children and siblings on. So we have one more over here, I think. Oh, there you are, Sandy. Thank you. What is your one action?
My one action is to talk to my husband. I have had conversations with my 3 daughters a lot, but have realized I haven't really talked to him about, where we're going to be buried and that sort of thing. So that'll
thank
be
you for
my
sharing.
action.
That's a great action. Fantastic. One more over here. Ricky?
Well, I'm going to have a conversation with my oldest daughter because we already chose her to be the executor. And she might not want to do that. Even though she retired as a full-board colonel. And she scares me to death, but I really need to have her understand it because we have 3 other daughters. And my best girlfriend from high school just died last week, and we will be going to her funeral down in San Diego. And so it is touching me. Did she get ready? How do I get ready? She had 3 sons. Are they going to help? And so it really brought it to the forefront, and I'm going to do that this week.
Good.
Good job, Ricky. Fantastic. Who else has someone as their executor or trustee and that person doesn't know that you've nominated them? Anyone? A couple of people, maybe? Oh, good. Excellent. So can we have a big round of applause for our panelists for what they've shared today? Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Lucas. Thank you all so much for being here. We look forward to seeing you in January, and happy holidays from all of us, and have a great rest of today.